As I said, I'm going to be putting together an entire course on marketing on YouTube, and I'm also probably going to put an entire course on innovation as well as entrepreneurship. So this particular segment can actually be very useful for all three. So I want to talk about value propositions. Everybody who is taking a class in business or is enrolled in a business school, whether it's undergrad or grad, there's no way that you can't talk about value propositions. It's not necessarily just for marketing students. Of course, if you're a marketing major or something related to entrepreneurship, innovation, you may have a more natural understanding of this. Even if you're a finance major or something to that effect, you really also need to have a pretty solid, decent, at least baseline understanding of what value propositions are all about. So the first thing I would say is, honestly, whatever you're doing in class, whatever teacher you have, really kind of just throw away that standard academic definition of value propositions, because I don't think it's going to be of any good use to you, and I really don't think that it's going to help you learn this concept. And trust me, I've been doing this for a long, long time, and I've also, in addition to my career, been teaching as my second career for 14 years now. So I would never say anything reckless. If I'm saying more or less just ignore and discard the academic definition, I'm not saying that in some sort of irresponsible way. So when you think about these kind of general academic definitions when it comes to value propositions, you hear something that kind of goes something like this. Value in marketing, also known as customer perceived value, is the difference between a prospective customer's evaluation of the benefits and costs of one product when compared with others. I just don't think that's very useful, and I don't think that you can really learn all that much. So over the years, I've cultivated a definition for value propositions that really, I think, makes a lot more sense. So it's one definition, but it comes in two parts. Or if you want to look at it a different way, there's two aspects of the definition that I've kind of cultivated over the years that you really need to just embrace. It's not that difficult. So the first aspect of value propositions are the credit, quote, the credit that you get or want to get in the market. So now what do I mean by credit? In the real business world, when we say, the credit that we're getting for this product, or if we add more features, my career is product development. So if we're adding more features to a product, we kind of ask ourselves in a meeting around a conference table, hey, are we going to get credit though for adding these things? We're going to charge a higher price for them, or a slightly higher price, or whether we're not going to charge a higher price. The question remains, are we going to get credit for this? This credit that I'm talking about means, do your customers or your prospective customers, do they, quote, get it? Do they understand this product or service that you are introducing to the market? So one of the things that you have to understand about value propositions is this concept is very relative, and that actually makes it more interesting and more rich. And quite honestly, people who are marketers, people who are entrepreneurs, people who are innovation people are the ones that, the more you understand this and the better business person you are, the better you're going to ultimately succeed. It's not a cookie cutter thing. But value propositions and the entire concept of value is very much relative. So you take something like a MacBook, whatever it might be, just a MacBook Pro, MacBook Air, it doesn't matter. So you take any type of Apple laptop and you compare it to, apples to apples when you look at the comparable Windows PC version, whatever brand of Windows it is. Typically an Apple unit, an Apple machine is going to be approximately double the price. Everybody knows that. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole thing about what Apple's value proposition is as far as laptops are concerned, but why is it that many people pay essentially double the price for a comparable Apple Mac laptop than they do a Windows PC? Because if you really want to look at it from a pure economic standpoint, that doesn't really make that much sense. And that's why in this session I'm going to give you several ways in which you can look at value, by the way. But it's a really relative concept. Assuming you can afford both the Windows PC equivalent or the whatever Mac you're looking at, there are some people who are going to say, you know what, from a tech standpoint, from a spec standpoint, it can happen with this particular Windows PC. So why on earth am I going to pay double the price for a comparable Mac? And then, of course, there are other people who are more than willing to pay for that Mac, pay double the price, because they see additional layers of value and they don't just see it from the tech specs. It's important that you understand that value and the whole concept value propositions is very much relative. This is what I mean by credit in the market. Do your customers understand what it is you are introducing? Do they see the, no pun intended, value in it? Do they see the point of view, for example, launching a particular product where there are competitors already out there, there are already other options out there, but you come in with a particularly different, unique value proposition, one that isn't necessarily currently there, and maybe you have to, offer this for a higher price point. That might be perfectly fine if your customers say to themselves, you know what, I see the point, I see the purpose in brand C, in addition to the fact that brand A and brand B have already been out there in the market for a while. Okay, I understand the company behind brand C, I understand what they're doing as well. So that's what I mean by credit. The second part of the definition, and again, don't confuse this, it's not two definitions, it's two elements of just one definition. The second part of the definition is all about differentiation. I cannot overstress this. So if you are creating a value proposition and you get that first part correct, the credit in the market, but you don't differentiate sufficiently from the competition, you may have somewhat of a value proposition, but you're going to have a weaker one. The idea is to have the strongest value propositions we can have and the ones that are hopefully the most unique. You might be thinking, well, to what extent do I have to differentiate? Unfortunately, that's not something that I can capture here on YouTube, and that's not something that I could even capture in a classroom. For years and years, undergrads and in particular MBA and executive MBA students, I've almost sort of apologized for not being able to give you an exact sort of threshold of what sufficient differentiation from the competition is. It's really on a case-by-case basis. I can really only give you the principles, but obviously you're always welcome to throw comments, questions at me here on YouTube, and I'll help you, and just tell me what it is you're thinking about. Give me an example, whether it's a real one or a fictitious one, and then I'll give you a reply. So if you're McDonald's, for example, you have to have enough of a distinction from other competitors. Or let me kind of put it in the reverse manner. If you are another type of fast food, hamburger style place, obviously when I say hamburger style, you're not just selling hamburgers, but you get the idea. If you are something like a Johnny Rockets, or maybe you are something like a Sonic, or whatever the case might be, or you're a Shake Shack, as long as you have enough differentiation, then you are hopefully satisfying that second aspect of what value propositions are all about. And by the way, you may have a smaller a customer base overall, a smaller market segment than McDonald's, but that's okay. You may have a more meaningful one. I don't know. Again, it might, it all depends on the actual specifics and on each, actual circumstance. So just remember that. Number one, the credit you get in the marketplace, and number two, you must make sure that you differentiate. I've had even executive MBA as well as MBA marketing students over the years for a long, long time kind of get only half the value proposition right, and they really don't get the other half right. So are they completely, quote, wrong? No, they're not, but it doesn't really make a good value proposition when you do it that way, because you really haven't sort of satisfied both conditions, and you're going to have sort of a weak value proposition on your hands. So let me share with you different types, and I'm not going to go through too many. There's probably 12, 15 different types of value propositions that you can, use as a company in order to sort of look at how you're going to position value in the first place. And the first one is one of the most classic, which we kind of borrow from economics. Marketing borrows from economics. Value equals quality over price. This is the kind of whole you get what you pay for sort of thing. And there's always going to be a customer out there who they don't necessarily care about the, quote, better company that has better technology or better specs with their product. They're just looking for those minimum specs where they just go in and they want to get the cheapest item there is. Let's say, for example, you go to Best Buy and you are in the market to buy a 60-inch TV. So I know that I know that TVs, well, in general, are relatively cheap these days, but nonetheless, so there's the Samsungs of the world, which in the mainstream TV market, they've kind of taken over from Sony, but then there's, smaller companies or, not so well-known companies. For those of you who know me, I love China, but not to pick on China, but a company like Haier, H-A-I-E-R, which is a Chinese company that also sells TVs as well as appliances and other types of things here in the US, at Best Buy and other places. So if you go into the Best Buy just wanting a 60-inch TV and you see a Samsung 60-inch, which has got all the bells and whistles, and it's got this, it's got that, it's got great sound, it's got great picture, it's, super thin, super light, whatever, but then you basically see the Haier, which is also a 60-inch TV. It's not going to probably last as long in terms of durability, in terms of performance. It may not have as good of a picture, it may not have as good sound, etc., but you don't necessarily care. Let's say the Haier is about $200 or $300 cheaper than the Samsung, and that's all you really care about. You just need to get a 60-inch TV, just the basics of the basics. The cheapest one, that's the customer that walks in to the, that walks into the Best Buy and says, hey, I need a 60-inch TV, and they immediately say, what is the cheapest one that you've got? And the salesperson might reluctantly say, well, it's that one. Okay, great, I'll take it. Where do I pick it up? And that's it. So there's always going to be that customer, and that customer is legit, by the way. This is not, me being judgmental in any way, shape, or form. That's very much a legitimate customer, and therefore it's a very much legitimate value proposition. Of course, if price doesn't matter in that category, well, then you trying to figure out a value proposition based on price is probably not going to be a good strategy overall. You might as well not even chase that in the first place. So, just kind of keep that in mind as well. But if you are looking at a category, sometimes people teach value by price in the sense that this only applies where price actually matters in a category as the most important thing. Price doesn't always have to be the most important thing. As long as price is a consideration, then I think value by price as a value proposition is completely legitimate. My only point right now is if you are in a category where price actually does not determine a sale, does not determine purchase behavior, well then don't go after this for obvious reasons. But this is, again, value by price. The next value proposition that I wanted to talk about is value by convenience. So in this world we live in right now where, we are all accustomed to Amazon and we're just getting so many things delivered to our door these days. So value by convenience has taken on an even stronger degree of importance these days. There's a lot of things, and this is not even new anymore, by the way. This is kind of like old news at this point. But, the whole subscription plan with things coming to your home every month, this is all value by convenience to a large extent. So this is a very legitimate value proposition if you are, for those of you who know about Fresh Direct, and Fresh Direct has actually evolved many, many times since then, but sort of Fresh Direct on a basic level. If you are, living in an area of the country where you do have Fresh Direct as an option. So, and Fresh Direct has moved a little bit into the suburbs, by the way, over the past few years. But, the basic Fresh Direct, that sort of basic grocery model, obviously you are paying a little bit more money. The idea is that you are getting your groceries delivered to your home, delivered to your front door, delivered to your lobby of your building, whatever. It's very much a popular value proposition these days that you can also utilize. Value by convenience is all about convenience to the customer, and yes, the customer is getting charged more, but make no mistake, the customer is not getting, quote, ripped off. Obviously, as a company, from a financial standpoint, from a profit standpoint, you have to make the numbers work, and you don't want to overcharge the customer for two reasons. Obviously, if you overcharge the customer, then you won't really have much of a customer, and two, you're just, you're really just making it, if your general model does work, you're really just making it right for competitors to come in and steal your market share. So obviously, you don't want to charge too much, but at the same time, it's okay, of course, to charge a little bit more. The customer doesn't feel as though they're getting ripped off. The customer knows that they're paying a premium with, say, Fresh Direct over going to a grocery store themselves because they are, of course, saving time, saving effort. They don't have to do that process. The groceries are coming to them, and they're willing to pay whatever that might be, 10, 20, maybe even sometimes 25, 30% of a premium above, going to the grocery store, or what would be called, kind of the standard for pricing in that category. Being a consumer products guy, I did want to actually share one value proposition, which is probably a little bit more on the B2B side, although the consumer side can also very much utilize this as well, and that is what's called value by productivity. So when you talk about value by productivity, don't make the mistake of thinking that this is value by performance. Value by performance is its own separate value proposition, but this is value by productivity. In other words, this means you are using your product, your service, to try and hopefully sell to your prospective customer on the basis of, if you purchase my product or service versus the competition, you can get more done with my product or service than you can with theirs. You are going to be more productive. So this is what we mean by value by productivity. If you, for example, are a salesperson and you sell, which, these products are not even sold, they're leased, as most people know, office copier machines, which I know they're not copier machines anymore. They copy, they scan, they do a lot of different things these days, but whatever. So these are these big, ugly, 1,000-pound pieces of machinery that people put, against the wall in some type of, copy room or whatever, or in a hallway, and they're wrapped with ugly beige plastic. So these are not sexy products. We, if you're a salesperson, you don't sell these products based on, the ways in which you sell an iPhone or anything like that. So let's say, for example, and I'm totally making this up, by the way. Let's say, for example, if you're Ricoh or you're Xerox, you might say, hey, you should lease our machines versus, say, Fujitsu, because if you lease our machines, there's more pages per minute, there's less waste, we've got better technology, wireless technology, and for the employees in your firm that you offer, let's say, iPads or whatever too, or company issued phones, they can just kind of walk over to the machine and from their phone, from their tablet, just initiate the printing. They don't necessarily have to keep going back to their workstation, to their desk, to their office, whatever. So that sort of thing. Or maybe, let's say, obviously this has been around for 30 years, but let's say you were the company that first had a collating and stapling function into your copy machine. So, hey, no longer do people on your team have to sit there for 5 hours when you need 200 copies of a 10-page report. It's instead of 5 hours, they just have to do the copying, and they're going to save 3.5 hours because our new machine has this brand new technology called collating and also stapling automatically. Your people can just kind of put the original 10-page document into the machine, put in the inputs, press start, and walk away and come back later. And they don't have to do any type of follow-up with all this kind of collating and stapling. Anyway, you get the point, that kind of thing. So value by productivity. This is also, by the way, useful in the consumer world as well. Microsoft Surface products, you know what a Surface is, right? Microsoft's branded Surface computers, line of family of computers and laptops, which, by the way, I think, I still, just because I'm a, quote, Apple person, I still very much use Microsoft and Windows and all those types of things all the time on a daily basis. And I think that Microsoft Surface, with the exception of that original RT, which I had bought for like a week and then I returned, Microsoft Surface is a really nice machine. I know they have like several of them, but they're really great machines, and I really mean that. They're really good, especially for people who like Windows instead of Mac. So the whole thing with a Microsoft Surface, now Microsoft knows that they're never going to win the cool factor, quote. They're never going to win the brand factor. They're never going to be more hip than Apple is, so that's just not going to happen. It won't happen in 100 years from now. So Microsoft is smart enough, when you see commercials for Surface, whether it's Surface versus an iPad, whether it's, iPad Pro or something, or, quote, regular iPad, or whether it's Surface versus MacBook Air, what does Microsoft do in all of those commercials, which I think for them really makes a lot of sense. They're banking on the fact that they're saying, with one device, which is a real two-in-one hybrid product, with one device, you can get more done with our product than you could with one of Apple's products. If you want to get everything done with Apple's products in the convenient way that you want to get these things done, then you have to carry two devices. You need to carry an iPad, and you also need to carry a MacBook Air or whatever. With our products, you just need to carry one Microsoft Surface, and it does everything for you. And that's really kind of how they're positioning themselves, but that's the value proposition that they're using. They're using value by productivity, and I really think that that's a smart move by Microsoft, and I think that it works for them.